I've spent over a decade producing melodic bass and melodic dubstep. I've released official remixes for Illenium, Seven Lions, Jason Ross, AU5, HALIENE, and more. In that time, I've produced more songs than I can count, and I've torn apart even more songs from the students inside of my academy that I teach. Every lesson I wish someone had told me when I was newer, every bit of information that could have saved me years worth of time, I've packed into this one video. So here are 26 lessons I had to learn the hard way, so you don't have to. Lesson number 1, write your song before you produce it. Most producers think they have a mixing or a sound design problem, when the reality is they have an order of operations problem. Chords and your melodies are the foundation of the entire song. They tell the story. Everything else is built on top of these. Sound selection and mixing, all these things are important, but if the song itself isn't there, no amount of EQing or layer stacking can fix that problem. At that point, you're just polishing something that doesn't even have a soul yet. Think about it this way. Take Levels by Avicii or Language by Porter Robinson, some of the biggest hits in EDM you've ever heard. The reason why they're hits isn't the mix, the sound design, or anything else. It's the chords. It's the melody. It's the way they make you feel. It's the journey they take you on. The mixing and the sound selection serve the song, but they don't make it. So lesson number 1 is, before you go spending hours tweaking EQs or stacking more layers, ask yourself, is this song good? Is there a story being told? Does this move me? Get that right first, then worry about everything else later. Lesson number 2, sound selection is half the song. So once the song is written, the sounds you choose can sort of make or break it. The right sound can completely transform a track, while the wrong sound can totally ruin a melody. Many producers I speak to think that they have a sound design problem. The reality is, most of the time, they actually have a sound selection problem. You could make almost any sound you've ever heard in any EDM song with a sine wave, a sawtooth wave, and a square wave. You don't need to overcomplicate things when it comes to sound selection or sound design. The right sound used in the right way will just work. The wrong sound can almost never be EQ'd or processed to become the right sound. This is especially true for your kick and your snare. These are arguably the two most important sounds in your entire song. People are going to be hearing them non-stop, and after all, this is dance music. So lesson number 2 is, spend more time finding the right sounds and less time trying to tweak, EQ, and process the wrong sounds to become the right sounds. Lesson number 3, less is more when it comes to layering. So I see this all the time. Producers will stack like 5 or 6 supersaws when maybe they only need 1 or 2. I made this mistake myself for years. To give you an idea, my early projects had 180, upwards of 200 tracks in a single project file. Now I keep things closer to about 80, and I still can achieve a super full and powerful sound. I learned to really squeeze every sound for all it was worth, choose better sounds, and stop stacking like 15 sounds together to try to Frankenstein into like one sound. So lesson 3 is being more intentional with your layering sound selection and stop reaching for the next preset, the next sound, the next layer. If a sound isn't interesting enough, either just turn it up in volume or pick a different sound. Lesson number 4, put all of your important sounds in mono. This is one of the secrets and one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years that really separates a pro track from an amateur track. Almost every layer in your song should have a strong mono presence. Kick, snare, bass, vocal, lead, saw, etc. Now, I'm not saying they need to be completely mono, but they do need to have a strong mono presence. The most important elements should sit comfortably in the mono part of your mix, but then you should also have wider layers way out here in the stereo field to accentuate them and make them feel really huge. So, lesson number 4 is, take your most important elements and have them sitting comfortably in the mono part of your mix. Treat stereo width as decoration, not as the foundation. Lesson 5, automation is what creates movement. That feeling you get as you're listening to a professional song. It just pulls perfectly from the verse into the chorus or from the build up into the drop. That sense of movement and story being told over time is largely automation. Producers who half-ass this or skip it entirely have super static, kind of lifeless songs, and they wonder what's wrong. My tracks have tons of automations. Just take my remix of You Were Right. If you look at the build up here, almost every single track, including the groups, have 1 or more automations. Just look at this build up. There's something on almost every single track as I'm scrolling through here. Every single sound is evolving over the course of this build-up, which creates a lot more excitement and tension than if I was just relying on my effects and my sweeps and stuff like that to do the heavy lifting. So lesson number 5 is, don't underestimate the power of automation. It's often the difference between a static, bland track and one that pulls you and keeps your attention the entire time throughout the entire song. Lesson number 6, use less reverb, not more. A huge reason why people's mixes sound muddy and chaotic rather than clean and punchy is because they have way too much reverb. Listening to individual sounds, it can seem like reverb adds emotion and space, so people have a tendency to kind of pile it onto everything. The problem is, all that reverb is just masking your tracks, it's creating mud, and it's removing the clean punchiness that most of you are going for with your songs. That's especially true when you're applying it to polyphonic chord-based synths like pianos, pads, strings, saws, anything with multiple voices. So lesson number 6 is use as little reverb as possible, be very intentional with what layers you're applying that reverb to, and low cut frequencies away from elements like pads, pianos, chords, etc. Reducing reverb is one of the fastest paths to making a song more clear, punchy, and professional sounding. Lesson number 7, finishing songs is what makes you a pro. The reason most producers get stuck in an 8 or a 16 bar loop, like they can just make a drop that sounds dope, is because they're never forcing themselves to finish full songs. Writing new ideas is the fun part. That's the part that is always super exciting. It never gets old. But the thing is, if you just keep starting songs over and over and over again, you learn almost nothing over time. Finishing full songs is what exposes your weaknesses as a producer and forces you to figure out ways to fix them. Just a quick tip, if you ever get lost and you don't know where to go next in your song, pick a reference mix that's in the same genre and same BPM, drag it into your DAW, and just compare your arrangement to theirs and just make similar choices about what they're adding or subtracting whenever they do. So lesson number 7 is to finish as many songs as possible, because at the end of the day, finishing songs, not starting them, is what's going to turn you into a pro. Lesson number 8, listen to your songs away from your studio. When you're done for the day, export your track, get it onto your phone, and then go and listen to it outside of the studio. In your car, go for a walk and listen to it on your headphones, listen to it on your Bluetooth speaker. It doesn't really matter. The point is, just go listen to your song outside of your studio, away from your DAW, and listen for all the flaws that need fixing. Just look at these notes that I took for just my You Were Right remix for Illenium. I have hundreds of notes like this in my phone, where I'm basically listening to my own music and just critiquing every single thing that could be better. I don't necessarily always have an exact solution of what to do, but I know that, hey, this thing at this moment in the song is incorrect and it needs fixing. When you listen outside of your studio on a different sound source than you're used to listening to, like your studio headphones, you hear things that you just wouldn't normally hear in the studio. It puts you in a different state of mind. So lesson number 8 is to listen to your song outside of your studio, take as many notes as possible, and come back with tons of action items that need to be fixed. Hey, quick pause before we move on. I just wanted to say that I have a freebie for you guys. If you want this entire list downloaded in a really neat, organized PDF, there's a download link in my bio. Go check that out. It's completely free. Lesson number 9, treat your body as the instrument. So creativity isn't like most other skills. You can't just brute force it. You can't sit down and just get to work and make the best song you've ever made. It's not like making an Excel spreadsheet or something. The lesson I learned over the last decade or so is that the healthier I am, the more mentally and physically aligned that I am, easier it is to sit down, focus, and create something truly amazing. When I was learning to produce, I didn't have a ton of time because I worked a 9-to-5 job. So I maybe had a 2-hour window every day. And that meant that I really needed to be effective during that 2-hour window. So I became obsessed with health, exercise, whole food diets, sleeping patterns, cutting out alcohol, anything that I could do to make my brain work better. It is unbelievable the difference it made in my ability to focus, my ability to create consistently, my ability to stay disciplined. So treat your body like a real instrument that needs taken care of, because the state you're in will dictate how well that session goes when you go to sit down in your studio. Lesson number 10, do your creative work as early as possible in the day. Humans are biologically suited to do their best critical thinking and creative work early in the day. After a full day at work, you're probably burnt out, and creativity becomes infinitely more difficult after that. To whatever extent you can, and I know this will be more difficult for some than others, I highly recommend making music before you go to work, before you've had a long, stressful day. I woke up at 5 a.m. for nearly 3 years so that I could produce for an hour or two before I went to work. So lesson number 10 is work on music as early as possible in the day when your brain is still fresh and ready to go. Lesson number 11, and this is a big one. Your phone is the number one enemy. Thankfully, when I was starting out, this wasn't as big of an issue. There were still smartphones back then, but the addiction to social media and all of the things that we're so addicted to these days wasn't nearly as prevalent back in those days. When it comes time to sit down and create, your phone is the number one enemy, the number one distraction by far. I guarantee you it is making you far less productive and far less creative than you're even aware of. If it's sitting anywhere near you in the studio, it's taking your attention away from the DAW every few minutes, and you may not even realize. So lesson number 11 is put your phone on Do Not Disturb, turn it off, or just leave it outside the studio completely whenever you're working on music. Lesson 12, take breaks every 90 minutes or so. What I've learned is it's very hard for your brain and your ears to focus for more than 90 minutes at a time, especially when you're mixing or EQing, when you're listening really critically. If you push past that 90-minute mark, it's really easy to keep working on something and make it worse while convincing yourself that it's getting better. Trust me, I did this for years. I wasted weeks and weeks of my life doing exactly this. The one exception here is if you're in a deep creative flow state. You know that feeling when you're just onto something, the whole song is just unfolding flowing effortlessly. You're not doing a lot of critical mixing or anything like that. You're just basically making the song. That's one thing I don't recommend you step away from. So lesson number 12 is take breaks every 90 minutes or so. Get outside, go for a walk, and reset your brain and give your ears a rest. Lesson number 13, turn your volume down, not up. Our ears fatigue extremely quickly when we're listening to something constantly for an hour or more. For years, I used to crank the volume up as I was producing because our brains have this thing where they think a louder sound is better than a quieter sound, even if it's the exact same sound. Plus, at lower volumes, it's actually a lot easier to hear what's going on in the song and in your mix. Plus, your ears will stay fresh for the whole session rather than dying and burning out in the first 60 minutes. So, lesson number 13 is turn the volume down, not up, and protect the one tool you cannot replace. Lesson number 14, journal before you produce music and read these books. It is unbelievable what journaling for 2 or 3 pages before you go to produce and create can do for your state of mind. This may sound silly or maybe complicated, but literally write about anything. What are you excited about? What is annoying you right now? Are you frustrated? Are you happy? What did you dream about? How did you sleep? It doesn't matter. Just take all the thoughts and all the noise in your head and just put it down on paper. There are 2 books that I'd highly recommend. These both changed my life, and I actually got this journaling lesson from one of them. So the first is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and the second is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. If you're serious about producing, read these books and take them seriously. I guarantee you they will change your life. So lesson number 14 is journal before you produce and read these 2 books. The mindset work pays off in the quality and output of your music. Lesson number 15, presets, loops, and samples are not cheating. They're a superpower. Anybody who tells you not to use presets, loops, or samples has no idea what they're talking about, and you should stop listening to them immediately. Every single one of the biggest producers out there who have released the biggest songs you've ever heard of use loops, samples, and presets. Making every single sound from scratch earns you nothing except a road that's extremely difficult to walk down compared to the one that everybody else is walking down. Are there producers out there like AU5 who can probably make every single sound in his song from scratch? Yes. Do you need to be that person? No. So lesson number 15 is use samples, presets, and loops freely. The myth that you shouldn't be doing that is just slowing you down. Lesson number 16, buy full sample packs, not just single samples. If you have to go dig through Splice every time you need a new kick or snare, it's going to kill your creative workflow. Downloading full sample packs not only gives you a more cohesive sound palette to choose from, but you'll also end up with a lot of really cool samples that you may not have actually individually chosen, but you'll end up finding some really cool uses for. So lesson number 16 is spend some time researching and going to find some great sample packs so that when inspiration hits, you have the right sound at your fingertips every time. Lesson number 17, get a MIDI keyboard and learn your scales. Trying to pencil in every single note for every chord or melody, it's extremely counterproductive. Even if you don't know how to play piano, having a MIDI keyboard sitting in front of you makes writing things much easier. I only recently learned how to sort of halfway play a song on piano kind of decently, but I have always written my melodies using my hands on a piano keyboard despite not having any idea how to play a piano, and it's always made things so much better and so much easier to write. On top of that, I highly recommend you learn just some basic music theory knowledge. How to write a basic triad, major chord versus minor chord, major scale versus minor scale, just the simple stuff. I spent years not even knowing how to write a single chord. I would just know if something sounded good or didn't sound good. The thing is, I recently learned how to very comfortably navigate scales and chords, and it's made my life infinitely easier. I just wish I had known how to do this right away. So lesson number 17 is get a MIDI keyboard, even just a cheap basic one, and learn your triads, your major versus minor chords, and your scales as soon as possible. Lesson number 18, mix on headphones, not speakers, and invest in a good pair of headphones. Creating and writing your song on speakers is totally fine, but when it comes to mixing and EQing, doing that on a decent pair of headphones will always be better than trying to do it even on an expensive pair of speakers if they're poorly positioned and if they're in a room with zero acoustic treatment. And the pair of headphones you're using matters way more than what a lot of people tell you. I recently invested $800 into a pair of Focal clear headphones, and I cannot believe the difference it has made in my ability to hear what's going on in the mix, my layering, make EQing choices, all of that. Honestly, that $800 was some of the best money I've ever spent. For about a decade, I used a $100 pair of ATH M50X, and the difference is staggeringly night and day. Did I still release a bunch of music that got signed by big record labels and stuff like that? Absolutely. Did it take me literally 200 plus versions in some cases to mix my song properly? Did it make it extremely difficult? Yes. So lesson number 18 is mix on headphones, not poorly positioned speakers, and invest in a decent pair of headphones because at the end of the day, you can't fix what you can't hear. Lesson 19, learn to mix and master your own tracks. Most people will tell you not to bother learning mixing and mastering. The big guys don't do it themselves, just pay somebody else to do it for you. The thing is, the type of engineers that the people at the highest level of our scene are using charge between $1,000 and $3,000. And the thing is, they pay those people to do it for them because they simply don't have time. They probably could do it themselves, but they're busy touring, making albums, playing shows. They just don't have time to sit there for hours and hours and hours mixing and mastering like we do. If you never learn how to mix your songs, you'll never really know what's wrong with it or how to fix it. And trust me, there will be plenty of things that need to be fixed with every song you make. So lesson number 19 is learn to mix and master your own music because that's going to be the only way you can learn how to fix the problems inside of your music yourself. Lesson number 20, be careful who you take feedback from. I constantly see producers who are at a similar skill level or maybe even a little bit lower than one another giving each other feedback and advice on their music. The problem is if another producer is at basically the same level as you, they don't really know any better than you do how to fix their music or how to make it sound better. Getting bad advice from producers who don't actually know the answer to that question might be slowing you down, or worse, you might even be going in the opposite direction to where you should be going. Seek advice only from those who have already done the thing that you want to do. So lesson number 20 is be careful who you take advice from, and ideally only take advice from people who are genuinely much further ahead of you in their career. Lesson number 21, make only what you genuinely love making. It's easy to get caught up in worrying what everybody else in the scene is currently doing. What are the trends that everybody's chasing? What's the sound that all the labels are signing right now? The thing is, chasing trends makes you sound like another version of what everybody else is already doing. Plus, trends change so often, literally every 3 to 6 months. So if you're trying to chase them, you'll probably never even catch up to where they currently are. To make progress as a producer and a creative artist over time, the only way you can do that sustainably is if you're just making music that you really love making, that you're excited about. So lesson number 21 is to worry way less about what everybody else in the scene is doing and just find the style of music that you love making and try to find your own little niche and your own little sound and style within that type of music. Lesson number 22, a label saying no to signing your track is not a measure of the quality of that track. When you inevitably get that next rejection email from the label that you want to sign your track, don't take that as a sign that your song is not good. Just because a label says no to signing your song doesn't mean it's not a great song. It only means that the one A&R that heard your song didn't rate the song as highly as you do, or it just means that that label's not interested in signing that specific style of music at this time. Almost every major artist you've ever heard of has the same story. They sent hundreds and hundreds of songs out to different labels, everybody said no, and then as soon as that artist blew up, all of a sudden the labels want to work with them, everybody wants to sign their tracks. So lesson number 22 is getting turned down by a label is just one person's opinion. It's not a verdict on the overall quality of your song. Lesson number 23, don't get caught up in the trap of playing tons and tons of local shows. Early on in my career of releasing music, I played tons of local shows. They were super fun. They made me really comfortable on stage, but honestly, they led me nowhere in my career. If the venue in the city near where you live is offering you a slot on the stage before a major artist and they want to pay you like $50, maybe $100 and some drink tickets, it's going to be a really fun night out, but ultimately it's not going to further your music career at all. It's also exhausting, preparing for your set for a week or two, staying up until like 3 or 4 a.m., waking up the next day exhausted and maybe hungover. It makes it really difficult to show up and do the work that's actually going to further your career, which is making better music. So lesson number 23 is don't get caught up in playing local shows over and over again. It's just a big distraction dressed up as progress. Lesson number 24, showing up consistently matters way more than you think it does. So this ties back into lesson 9. Creativity isn't something you can just turn on and off at the snap of a finger. For that reason, you want to give yourself the maximum number of chances, the maximum number of at-bats, so to speak, as possible. My recommendation, what worked for me, is to create for at least 30 to 60 minutes every single day, no excuses. Now, this is going to be harder for some people than others, depending on your schedule, but I promise if you really look hard at your life, you can find 30 to 60 minutes every day somewhere before or after work, somewhere on your lunch break, just somewhere in there. Some days when you show up to do this work, you'll feel like a rock star, you'll make the coolest thing ever that you want to just show to all of your friends, and it'll be the best day ever. Other days, you'll just stare at your computer screen, moving samples around, and feel like you got nothing done. In either case, it was a really good use of your time. Building this consistency and getting those muscles grown over time will do more for your creativity than you could ever imagine. Many times, on those days where I walked into the studio feeling super crappy, I don't want to do this, I ended up sitting down and forcing myself to work, and eventually I ended up with some really, really amazing stuff. Those were some of the days where I wrote the best music I've ever written. But if I had listened to my brain that was telling me, this is gonna suck, you're not gonna get anything good done today, I would have never made some of the best songs I've ever written. So lesson number 24 is show up every single day for at least 30 to 60 minutes, especially on the days when you feel like you don't want to. Lesson number 25, stop comparing your music to other people's music. I fell into this this trap for years. It honestly made me want to give up on my music faster than almost anything else. The instinct we have is to compare our work in progress song to the fully finished, mixed and mastered song that was created by the person at the top of our industry who's been producing for 20 plus years. That's not really a fair fight, is it? Back when I had only been producing for a few years, I would take my work in progress and compare it to like a 7 Lions or an Illenium song, and I would think to myself, man, mine sounds like crap, what's wrong with me? The thing is, those guys had been producing for 15, maybe even 20 years by the time they made the song that I was comparing my song to. They had already mastered every technique that I was still just barely learning. So, number 25 is, don't expect your music to sound as good as the people who have been producing for a decade or two when you've only been making music for a few years. Lesson number 26, and this is a very, very big one in the modern world that we're living in. Don't spend hours making and posting content before the quality of your music is actually there. These days, I see this all the time. Producers are out there filming content, posting content, spending a bunch of time on social media, and the quality of their music is still super novice. Trust me when I tell you, and this may sound harsh, but if the quality of your music isn't undeniably good, your content will go nowhere. These days, branding and content are more important than they've ever been. It may actually be impossible to blow up as an artist without a really solid brand and amazing content. But the thing is, branding and content are pretty worthless if the music, the foundation of that content, isn't undeniably good. So, lesson number 26 is, don't go spending a ton of time on content and branding when your music quality is still novice. So, that's the video. Every lesson that I wish I had had over the decade plus that I've been producing music, and that I've made more songs than I can even count. If you want to see many of these lessons in action, click the video that just popped up on the end screen here. In this video, I break down how Illenium builds his drops. The sound selection, the writing, the stuff that makes his music truly special. I'll see you guys there.